Okay, hi everyone. Today we have a special treat. We have Laurie Bowman, that's how you say it? Yeah,
Yes, Bowman. That's close enough.
yeah, that's my accent. So Laurie is, I know Laurie for about 6 years now, if not more. Laurie is a thought leader in the risk management area, and especially within engineering projects. That is one of his passions. And we're gonna tap into Laurie's experience and knowledge today. So, hi, Laurie.
Hi, Shemi. Yeah, a pleasure to be here. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for making the time and sharing with us whatever you're gonna share. I think we agree that the goal of those interviews are really to inspire other engineers to become the best they can be and fulfill their potential, you know, personal potential and professional potential. Yeah. You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about us being at our best individually and also collectively as a profession as well.
Yeah, cool. So can you share with me and with the audience about yourself, where you're from, family, hobbies, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm based in Mount Isa these days since December last year, but I am from Brisbane actually, and have spent most of my life in Brisbane. So I have three brothers and two sisters down there as well, and my son lives on the Gold Coast. So definitely southeast Queensland is certainly home and where I'm from. So enjoying life up here in Mount Isa at the moment.
Yeah, cool. And can you give us kind of the highlights of your career, like the path of your career, where you studied, what your experience, milestones, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess started off studying engineering at the University of Queensland. So going through school, really enjoyed the mathematics and the statistics and solving complex problems and some of those sorts of things. So it's fairly natural that I just fell into an engineering course, and I really enjoyed that at University of Queensland. And as I did that, I found I was selecting a lot of elective subjects around psychology and leadership and things like that as well, which I sort of experimented with a little bit, and then completed my degree in engineering. And it was a few years after that that I wound up going and doing an MBA. And as part of that MBA, wound up specialising in quantitative analysis, which is sort of statistics and numerical modelling, and organisational behaviour, which is largely the psychology element.
Yeah.
And more just recently, I've actually gone back to UQ again with the UQ risk section, and I've just commenced a PhD in risk and leadership with UQ.
Yeah, cool. So what drew you to engineering, except the love of
Well, it was interesting. So as I mentioned, I really enjoyed problem solving, and in particular mathematics and science and problem solving from that perspective. I wouldn't say I ever sort of woke up wanting to be an engineer. It was just one of those sorts of things that I naturally gravitated towards, and it's sort of evolved from there. I think one area of engineering that I found I was still hungry for something more was probably on the leadership side and the people side, which I think is what's sort of brought me across to some of the psychology and leadership training as well.
Yeah, and that's where we met, in the leadership and management committee in Engineers Australia.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Any main milestones in your career you can think of?
Oh, well, there's so many significant milestones for me. I've spoken recently about one of them. I'll speak about a different one this time. I think one of the transformational experiences for me was with a state government transportation delivery agency that had a very broad range of projects that they were running concurrently. So a very complex range of projects. And the purpose of the projects was to improve accessibility, particularly for rail stations for the elderly and disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So it was helping some of the vulnerable people in our community by installing lifts, ramps, improving accessibility, car parks, and some of those sorts of things. And it was really a perfect storm because there was a state election coming up. So there was all sorts of political pressures where different people wanted things done in their electorate and all of this sort of thing. There was the standard project management methodology that we wanted to follow. We didn't want things to be too jumbled up, as well as we had a very conservative organisation that, very traditional government organisation where people were very much afraid of failure, didn't like sharing bad news, kept problems under the carpet. So it was a perfect storm for me going in there. So we had reports we had minister's office that wanted reports within a day of the end of the month. And when I first got there, it typically took about 3 weeks out of every month for these reports to go out. So it was a very, very challenging environment. We actually wound up having what was called a culture change initiative in parallel with my project, which was a streamline reporting initiative. So we had organisational psychologists come and speak to the executive and then look at the behaviour of the organisation and work very proactively on the soft skills to help create, psychological safety and all of these sorts of things, which then empowered me with my project, which was about performance management and risk management, once that safety had been realised to help people share bad information. So it was a complete transformation from a paper-based system where everybody was blaming everybody else and afraid to share bad news to one that really became very much a team culture. We transferred first to Excel and then to a database system, and started being very proactive in managing risk and helping each other out. It was just an amazing, really amazing transformation to be involved in. And the one thing that really stood out for me was the project director. We had an offsite where everybody stopped work and the project director pulled us all offsite. And I'd been to many of those before, and so I thought I knew what I was in for, but this one was quite different. The guy, JT was his name, he brought in a speaker who was actually a blind man. And he wasn't born blind, he was born with sight and lost his sight at age 17, if you can imagine how stressful something like that would be for a 17-year-old male. And he told his story, and he told of how much fear, the depression that he had, and how difficult it was for him just getting out of the house. And he stood in front of us and described his fear standing on the side of the road after he'd called a taxi, feeling the puddles splash on him, hearing the roar of traffic, trying to figure out where his taxi was and things like that. And so he had so many failed attempts just to get out of the house from doing that. He described what it was like going to the train station, just how difficult that was for him, every step that he would take. And then he described the difference that had been made at his local station once we'd done simple things such as installing ramps, installing lifts, and installing tactiles. The tactiles that go along the edge of the platform, how much safety that created for him. And so he described that in immaculate detail. And for all of us, it was just the most mind-blowing experience. And we came out of all of that connected with a common purpose. And we all came out obviously very highly motivated and proud, but also understanding what our purpose was and what the value was that we were delivering for the community. Whereas earlier on, very much it had been about, just getting the task done, very much a task oriented without that real vision and that view of the picture. So to be part of that experience, and in particular, that presentation was a masterstroke. I've never seen anything so inspiring in a project that I've ever been involved with.
That's awesome leadership from the project director, you said?
It was very good.
He actually introduced you to your main stakeholder.
Yeah, the primary customer, and the customer who had the most compelling and inspiring story I've ever heard. Was fantastic.
Yeah, and I love what you said, that it changed from being task-oriented to mission-oriented.
That's right. Suddenly everyone had a purpose. We all knew that we were all doing something towards the other Dawson Coe was his name. I'll never forget his name.
So yeah, you found, well, the project director connected you to your why, and the how become easy.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. Suddenly, all the other obstacles we were able to overcome. It was very.
Oh, I got goosebumps. That's really that was awesome. Yeah.
Pretty.
I work with the business owners. I'm trying to create that connection to the why, and beautiful story. I love it. Yeah, cool. My next question was what project you most enjoyed working on, but I think we got a good answer there.
Yeah, that one was a pretty good one.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your journey from being a student to becoming a professional engineer? What steps you had to take, those kind of things? And so I just want to add that I want to, if there's a graduate engineer or a engineering student listening to us, to be inspired to become a professional engineer, you know? So if you share your story about that.
Yeah, sure. So, well, for me, it was, as I mentioned, it started off just enjoying solving complicated problems.
Yeah.
And so I really liked the statistics and the mathematics and things like that. But there was another side of me that, as a student, particularly a high school student, I think that loved the things like the team sports and the psychology behind team sports. So the whole idea of having a collective goal rather than just your individual goal, and having to work together in a team fashion rather than an individual fashion, having to communicate, take risks, and all of those sorts of things. I was always very fascinated with things like cricket, AFL, rugby, and found that sort of competitive performance aspect really interesting. And so for me, when I did get into engineering, it was, so initially I started off in preventative maintenance and things like that, which I found very, very rewarding, and I learnt a lot. But it was when I got into like performance management, project risk and performance management, that's where, when I reflect now, that's where I can see that those true things that I loved as a youngster. So instead of tracking, the run rate per over of a cricket team, suddenly I was tracking the cost performance index of the project that I was on and things like that. So I found that by getting my career in line with the things that I truly love, that I truly was quite passionate about, which for me was managing risk and performance management, or tracking performance and the whole psychology, I found that thoroughly rewarding. And that doesn't mean that every graduate or student out there will be interested in those same things, but certainly for yourself, if you, instead of just jumping into the first job or going for the first big paycheck or something like that, to be making sure that you spend time thinking about what it is that you really love about engineering, or what are those aspects, and then design your career so that you're doing the things you love. Everything else, I think, will tend to look after itself. So it took me a while. It took me, between 5 and 10 years out of university before I found the stuff that I really loved doing, compared to the stuff that I found sort of interesting, but a little bit not as enjoyable at times. But that would definitely be the key takeaway for me.
Yeah, it is. It takes time to actually, and trial and error, but also we change. What we like changes, and with our experiences, but it takes time to find really what drives us, and maybe a little bit of age also. I'm not sure.
I definitely agree with that. And as we mature, it definitely changes. Even now, I find myself having a lot of empathy for vulnerable groups and things that we can do to help vulnerable people in the community. And this is a new thing. This isn't something that I used to identify with when I was younger. It's just a new passion that I've found coming out as well. So it continues to evolve, but to continuously be aware of it and deliberately shape your career to things that you enjoy doing, I think, is the key.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to reverse engineer what we want to feel when we're doing a job rather than what
That,
we're
that,
doing, you know?
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
so rather than, changing your resume to match the job that you're applying for, change the jobs that you're applying for to match who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really important. Yeah, because people lie in interviews. It's like, yeah, I'm really good at this. No, you're not. And it's not criticism. It's just you're not good at it because you actually never done it because you don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's
So if you
exactly
want
right.
to do something, you go and do it. You find the
Absolutely.
opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Yeah. Um, so if you find yourself as a if you take yourself back in time to your early career, early days out of uni,
Yep. Long.
what advice would you give to like a young engineer that just graduated? What would
Oh,
yeah,
so I think these days, like it's a great time to be in engineering. Certainly, so first thing would be congratulations on being in engineering because um, society needs a lot of us and a lot more involvement from us in the future. I think the key things would be, as I mentioned earlier, keeping in tune with the aspects of engineering. Engineering is such a broad area. You don't have to know every part of it or be involved in every part of it, but find those parts that resonate with you and do those. And then for me, the second one would be that human element. So really investing time to work on your interpersonal skills and understand people really well. So certainly, I believe the engineering curricula has improved now, but when I went through, it was very much technical
yeah,
focused. But if you can be mindful of developing those interpersonal skills, it's going to be extremely, extremely beneficial for you. I think the amount of change that is happening in society and the amount of technological advancement is continuing to escalate, but people's ability to change is not improving a lot. So to be able to help people along the journey, to be able to understand what their concerns are, what their issues are, I think to combine that with your technical skills would definitely be a really good bit of advice that I'd pass on.
I really loved it when you start with congratulating that graduate. We forget
Yeah,
to celebrate, We forget to
absolutely.
celebrate because we
Yeah.
graduate and we're going, I need to get a job. I need money. Hold
Yeah.
on. You just finished something huge. Celebrate. So I love it when you congratulate the person. And what was the other thing he said? Oh, he said about um, you said something that I connected to communication. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I believe that engineers are so they really enjoy work in isolation and work in their cubicle, getting their work perfectly done, and the person next to them actually, can contribute to that, but they choose not to. Um,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
that working in isolation, everyone in their cubicle, like the piping engineers don't want to talk to the structural engineer, although there's battery limit between them, Um,
That's a really good point, and that's yeah. So the other thing, all of our projects are becoming so much more complex and so much more integrated.
yeah,
So now more than ever, we need to be the collaborators, the joiners, the people who engage stakeholders from diverse
yeah,
backgrounds, different disciplines of engineering to come up with the optimal solution. So I agree 100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, what you said before is that on top of the technical skills, they need to know to communicate. And I think engineers need to master communication as part of their job description. They all have to talk with one another. Have the what is the isolation in design that is actually affecting the project. And we have the systems around it, like design review meetings and all of those things. Their purpose is for people to communicate. But if you actually
I,
build the communication into the design, you don't wait for the review. It's if you actually make it part of your everyday, it's so much more powerful. But it needs
yeah,
to,
I agree 100%. Almost every decision should be like value engineering, making sure you've got
Yeah.
enough viewpoints so that you're optimizing whatever you come up with. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more.
And at least, when you work with the team, at least the team leader needs to know, a bit of a bigger picture so he can make, little decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, he said another thing, I don't remember that one. Anyway. um, are you registered engineer? Are you chartered?
Yes, so I'm a chartered engineer I'm on the National Engineering Register,
Mm,
and I'm also an RPEQ. So,
yeah.
a variety of different registrations, and I've also been working with groups like Engineers Australia to um, look at the competency frameworks behind things like a risk engineer, a
Mm.
cost engineer, and some of those unusual ones as well. So, yeah, definitely see registration of engineers as being a really valuable and important thing for all engineers to, if you haven't done it already, at least put a pathway in place to get there.
What do you think it's important about it to become registered?
Well, it's about recognition of our profession. It's about improving standards. It's about giving assurance to society so that when they trust us to design the bridge, to design the building, whatever it is that we're doing, it's about having those standards and those assurance processes in place. I mean, just recently, the deaths in Dreamworld, reading through the coroner's report on that, and things like that, where you recognise the absence of registered engineers in those sorts of processes, the more we can elevate the status of our profession and help people understand what it is we do and how much we help reduce risk for society in so many ways. I think it's vitally important, and it's a very important puzzle piece of that is all of us getting registered so that those credentials can be recognised.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think as a first world country in Australia, we really need to be the lighthouse for the beacon for excellence. And we can't be
Right.
excellent if we're not, we can't convey excellence if we being cowboys.
I couldn't agree anymore. So within engineering, we've very similar to what we were talking about earlier, the people skills. I think we've been very good at being technical experts, but taking your metaphor of sitting in the cubicle, I think as a profession, I think we probably could have been out there helping people understand what we do more, and I think we might have been in the cubicle, so to speak. So I think there is a huge opportunity for engineers to have more say and more involvement at government level, within government. So we have lots of economists, lots of accountants, lots of lawyers involved in government. To see engineers get more involved and in the boardrooms as well. I think most of the problems that we're facing in society in the future are really engineering problems. It's about technology advancement, cybersecurity, sustainability issues. These are all engineering problems, yet the presence of engineers in government and within the boardroom is probably not where it should be. So we're probably punching below our weight, and there's an opportunity for us to be more proactive in those sort of areas as well.
Yeah. And, I see the journey of leaders that come from engineering background is the first step is actually being registered. When you register, you become a leader in your area of expertise. And when you are a leader in your area of expertise, you can start influence the wider community. But you have to do step one. You have to do step one.
That's it. And everybody doesn't have to be a leader and an influencer, but just by taking that step and getting registered, you're helping promote the profession. So for those who are trying to increase the recognition, the more uptake we have of those sorts of things, it's good for the profession overall.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we're doing, whatever our niche is, whatever area of engineering we enjoy, just to do that and to do it with excellence, as you say, is a really important thing.
Yeah. And the funny thing is when you become registered and you become, part of a movement of promoting the engineering profession, you're actually going to get rewarded personally. it's not just you do things for the greater good. You do it
Yeah.
for your back pocket at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Even not necessarily for your back pocket, even internally. It's just
Oh yeah.
that internal satisfaction you have of helping fill a problem or identify a gap and fill the gap. It's very rewarding, and certainly been very rewarding for me.
I think when I got my registration letter in the mail, I grew in an inch, you know, just reading it that I'm registered now, you know. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't know how old your kid is, but when my kids went to sleep 9 and woke up 10, they were an inch taller because they were double digits.
yeah, it was definitely a very satisfying experience for me, particularly the RPEQ, which was the most recent one that I've done. It was interesting because within or risk and cost engineering, which is sort of my background, they're not very well recognised. Things like that. My RPEQ has actually come through as leadership and management, primarily as recognition for the work that I've done in risk engineering.
Yeah, cool. That's really awesome. Next question. I kind of forgot what the questions. So what do you see the biggest opportunities in advancing the engineering profession? And I think we kind of touched base on that a bit. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity is that, I think I've touched on it, but the idea that the world is changing at an ever increasing pace, and for the engineering community to be ready to help people and to be adaptable and flexible. Like, I've been so proud, even in this COVID-19 environment. So I would not know how to design a respirator or any of those sorts of things. But to see how many contractors and engineering organisations were transforming their own capabilities to serve wider society and things like that, I thought was absolutely brilliant. And it's COVID at the moment. It's going to be something else down the track, and certainly it's going to be climate change and the amount of CO2 we're emitting. If engineers can be more responsive to that and see our ability to be flexible and adaptable rather than sort of rigid in our cubicle or in a silo, but be able to be the ones who can solve problems, big problems, and adapt, I think that's going to be wonderful. And as I keep mentioning, helping other people change as well. So knowing that people tend to resist change, and if we can become better at helping others with that change process as well, I think the profession's in a good place.
Yeah, you mentioned a few times climate change. I'm guessing it's actually something you're passionate about.
It is, yeah. So I think it's something that is one of those big, slow-moving problems that has been there, and I don't feel like our government has been as proactive about it, as courageous as they should be. And it's one of those problems where it's a global problem, but no individual country sees it. Each country sees it as somebody else's problem, and people tend to value their economy more. What we've learned, I'm really excited about what we've learned from COVID-19. And I cannot help but think that there are so many lessons that we can learn from what's happened in COVID to change our behaviour going forward, and maybe even to loosen our grip on how rigid we have to be with our rat race economic behaviour, and look at how we can do things differently. Before, a little bit earlier on, we spoke about remote working and some of these sorts of things. There's so many things that in the past we never really pushed them very heavily, but suddenly we've learned, what we can be adaptable when we need to. Maybe let's look at how many of those things we can apply after the epidemic, and maybe we can solve some other problems such as climate change as well. Yeah,
I really dig that. We talked about it earlier in depth, a bit more in depth. But one thing, again, you said a few times, is solving the problem of climate change. I think engineers have a role in actually not just solving the problem, but preventing from the problem to become worse, which is, in my opinion, it's very bad at the moment. But
yes,
not just solving the problem, but avoid having a problem, or Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Preventative rather than
that's
mitigating
the word I was looking for. Yeah.
the yeah, yeah, so there is a huge role, and I think that this almost comes back to the opportunity for us to have more influence
Mm,
within government and at a high level, and for our professional associations to be having a strong voice rather than a sort of a passive mindset. I think there's plenty that can be done, and I know that there's a lot of forums out there that are looking at this sort of thing already.
yeah. And like you talk about the government, I'm thinking, what can we do as individuals to promote these things? Because we know if we wait for the government to do things, they actually they don't see long term. They see 3 or 4 years long term until the next elections.
Yeah,
We as
yeah.
individuals, we think about our kids, our grandkids. Now, even if we don't have any, we're thinking about what world we leave behind. What kind of legacy, and we don't want to leave, a burnt world.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Everything that we do, if we view ourselves as leaders, and that every action that we're taking, when we're choosing to drive the car, if we're choosing to walk, or whatever it is that we're doing, when we're selecting what car we want to buy or whether we want to buy a car, I think every decision we make, we've got the opportunity to lead by example and then influence others to sort of follow suit as well. So on so many levels, there's opportunities for engineers to inspire change.
Yeah, I was working with a client earlier this week, and I'm working with him, not with his company, just him as an individual. And he had not communication, but he had problems with his boss that really kind of backstabbing, all of those things in the office, really indicator of bad culture. And he asked me, how do I get around it? What we came up with is, if he knows his values and he knows what he's not willing to do, he become, like I used that word before, like the beacon of not backstabbing. And if anyone does it around him, he just said, don't do that around me. I'm not accepting it. So that's the individual actually changing the culture of the company,
Yeah,
just because, hmm?
yeah,
Just,
I like the whole idea of understanding your values, identifying the values, and then holding a standard, holding other people to a standard of
yeah,
alignment with those values. I agree 100%.
yeah, that's really cool. I dig this conversation so much. It's like down my alley. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care about anyone else. I'm enjoying it.
Very good.
Yeah. We're just about to wrap up, mate. Any final thoughts or a message to other engineers? I know we had plenty of deep messages.
Oh wow, man! Well, yeah, there's so many. I just think for us to collaborate as a community, all of us to do the best we can in our own little niche, and to remember that we are a community and a very valuable profession. And I think that the value that we offer is only going to increase in the future. As I mentioned, almost all of the world's problems are engineering problems in some sort of way. So let's work together. Let's not be in our cubicles. Let's work together, collectively promote the profession, and work together to do what we can.
Yeah, cool. I actually want to ask you before, did you have during your career any mentors? Or
Well, I've had so many mentors, some of them formal, most of them informal, lots of different people who've inspired me and influenced me. But I think I almost look at it that every person that I interact with is my teacher or my mentor in some way. Sometimes it's a little bit more official than others, but yeah, I've had plenty, and even now I've got plenty of mentors.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you recommend for young engineers to actually have awareness around the benefits of a mentor in their career, and where it can help benefit
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, I think it's so valuable. So I definitely recommend that, and certainly reaching out to, I know the universities and a number of professional associations. I know University of Queensland, QUT, Engineers Australia, PMI. There's a lot of very good organisations around engineering and project management that do have mentoring programs. And I definitely recommend trying one of those. And if not, don't be afraid to just reach out to somebody and invite them to be your mentor. If there is something about that person that you like or admire, don't hesitate to reach out to people.
Yeah. What we're doing kind of now is mentoring people that actually listening to what we're talking about. And that's, I think there's great value in that, and that's what I'm trying to promote, definitely. Cool, mate. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time on your busy Sunday afternoon to to have a chat. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, it was great catching up with you, Shemi. Thank you very much. Awesome, mate. Have a nice weekend.
You too.
Okay, cheers.